The fantasy playoffs are here. We're talking about all the top waiver wire pickups for week 14 coming right up. What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Gridiron Fantasy Football Podcast for Wednesday, December 9th, 2020. And I'm Chip, I'm your host, and thank you so much for listening today. If you're a new listener, thank you so much for joining us as well. If you'd like to share our podcast, you can find us over on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. If you'd like to watch us, you can watch us over on YouTube at Gridiron Fantasy Football. So please do me a favor, hit subscribe, hit the bell, so you don't miss any more episodes. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about all of the top waiver wire pickups for week 14. And look, this is it. Fantasy playoffs is here. It's a one and done scenario now. You have to put the best lineup you can for each week of the playoffs. And now some of these names may be redundant, but these are people that you can try to play and pivot to just in case you're still dealing with injuries. You never know when COVID stuff could happen, but before I get into that list, let's recap some of the moments of the Tuesday night football game. We had the Cowboys and Ravens finish out week 13, and the Ravens took this game 34-17. Now, everyone was wondering when Lamar Jackson is going to look like Lamar Jackson of last year, and I think we finally had a glimpse of that on Tuesday night. He had a pretty good game. Passing wise, he only had over 100 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns throwing. He had another touchdown on the ground. So a good fantasy game from Lamar Jackson. And honestly, he has one of the favorable playoff matchups going forward. So I think if you're a Lamar Jackson owner, you are pretty excited about that. Now going to the Cowboys, Andy Dalton, not a bad game from him. The Ravens defense is a pretty stout defense. But he threw for 285 yards, had 2 touchdowns. Now, he did have an interception, but not a bad game against a good defense. When it comes to rushing the ball, Zeke, he had 18 carries for 77 yards. Pretty mediocre game from him. He hasn't really had a really good game since Dak Prescott has gone out with the injury. But, it's one of those things, it's a down season for Zeke. I think that there's this offensive line is struggling. So that obviously, doesn't benefit Ezekiel Elliott. He's having some issues with, just running the ball and just being that elite running back that we know he is, but it's just an off year for him. But on Baltimore's side of the ball, they continue to do what they do. They distribute the ball between J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and Mark Ingram. Now, Gus Edwards, he led with 101 yards, but J.K. Dobbins was the one who got the touchdown. He had 71 yards as well. But Lamar Jackson still had the 13 carries. So, this is a rush first offense. They're gonna cycle through those running backs, and they're all effective. But it all depends on who's gonna get that touchdown and whatnot. But if you're a J.K. Dobbins owner and you played him, like I've said in the last couple podcasts, I like J.K. Dobbins over everyone else. I think he has a better opportunity to have a touchdown and all that. So overall, good fantasy outing for J.K. Dobbins. When it comes to the wide receivers, Marquise Brown, he's actually kind of woken up a little bit. He had 5 catches for 39 yards and a touchdown on 8 targets, so that's good. A lot of people had dropped Marquise Brown, so now a lot of people are trying to pick him up off the waiver wire, and hopefully this is something that continues on through the fantasy playoffs. He's a very fast receiver, and that one throw that he had, that Lamar Jackson and Marquise Brown for that touchdown, was a dime of a throw. So you just saw the arm talent from Lamar Jackson on that pass to Marquise Brown. So that's encouraging to see Marquise Brown, kind of finally getting those targets and getting some production. On the Cowboys side of the ball, Michael Gallup, he led the team with 11 targets. He was 7 for 86 and a touchdown. You had CeeDee Lamb, he was 6 for 46 on 9 targets, and Amari Cooper was 5 for 43 and 1 touchdown on 9 targets. Then Dalton Schultz was 4 for 44, on 4 targets. So, this is something as well with Andy Dalton. This is now, when Andy Dalton first came into the starting lineup, Michael Gallup was a guy that he was targeting a lot. And then he kind of faded away, and then this game came back to Michael Gallup getting 11 targets. So I'm not saying that's going to be the continuation of what's going to happen throughout the weeks, but it looks like Andy Dalton likes throwing to Michael Gallup, and I think it's one of those things where Can you trust that going forward if you need a receiver in the fantasy playoffs? I'm probably not going to bet on that, but it's still something to monitor just in case you are on a bye week right now and maybe you lose a receiver. Maybe Michael Gallup is there, but I think that this is just one of those games where, the Cowboys play Cincinnati in Week 14, so it may be a pivot. It may be a boom-bust type of situation if you play Michael Gallup. But with that being said, let's move on to some of the news that went on Tuesday. Now, there's only really one big story out of this whole entire, scope of news, and that's Jalen Hurts. The Philadelphia Eagles finally came out and declared Jalen Hurts the starting quarterback in Week 14. So now the Eagles are going to bench Carson Wentz, and it sucks. It sucks for a guy who, he's had ups and downs. He definitely has injuries. Now, obviously, the year that he won the Super Bowl, he got them to a certain point where he was playing at an MVP level. They were just continuing to win games, and then he gets hurt, and then Nick Foles comes in and takes him to a Super Bowl. But, it's just one of those things where I feel like Carson Wentz, he's still a talented quarterback. The offensive line is just not as good as he previously had. But what do the Eagles do now? Do they have a lot of dead cap in Carson Wentz's contract? I mean, Jalen Hurts, he is definitely going to bring a different dynamic to the Eagles offense because of his playmaking ability, and he's a dual threat, just like Carson Wentz is. But I just think Jalen Hurts is a little more athletic. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how Jalen Hurts goes forward with the Eagles. I mean, but it's going to be an interesting situation when the season ends and what the Eagles decide to do with Carson Wentz. But as of right now, it's a Jalen Hurts show. So hopefully that gives a little bump up to the offense, to all of the pass catchers, hopefully the Miles Sanders, because Miles Sanders continues to have a drop in snap counts and workload, and that's concerning if you're relying on Miles Sanders to help you in your fantasy playoffs. But the next piece of news is pretty small, but Chris Godwin, he underwent a procedure to have his pins removed from his broken finger. So he's been playing with pins in his finger. He's been dealing with playing with a splint. So he shouldn't miss any games because of it. But it's now nice to know that he's having his hardware removed. So with that being the case, let's go ahead and jump into all my top waiver wire pickups for Week 14. This is an exciting time if you're a fantasy football owner. You have to, hopefully you have a bye week. Hopefully you're one of those, fantasy footballers are able to have a bye week and just chill back and wait to see who your opponent is for Week 15. But there's a lot of people out there who just clawed their way into the playoffs, and now they're going to try to, be the underdog, be the Cinderella story. But it's been fun. I mention my league once in a while on the podcast, and I honestly am very surprised that this happened. But in my main league that I reference on the show a lot, I finally secured a 13-0 season. I know that people can always win championships. They can always win divisions if you play divisions in your fantasy football league. But I think it's very rare for somebody to go 13-0 in fantasy football. I mean, you have to have so many things go your way. And I had some very close games throughout the season. And for some reason, it was just luck was on my side where I've gone 13-0. And I mean, you can't get any better than that. So I'm super excited about that. And I play with a group of great fantasy footballers too. Like, these are not guys that are just people who barely know players' names. We all do our research. We all know football. We all know stats. And for me to come out like that, I mean, I definitely would love to win the championship in my league. But going 13-0, that's always going to be a record that can never be broken in our league. And it's been around for 17 years. So very cool story. So with that being the case, let's go ahead and go into some of the waiver wire pickups for Week 14. And I'm going to start off with the quarterback position. Now, I'm going to start off with Jalen Hurts because, he's a guy that obviously it's only if you're in a 2 quarterback league and you have to replace Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts has to be your top priority, because if you're in a 2 quarterback league and you just lost Carson Wentz due to benching, you have to grab this guy. Hopefully you have Fab. sometimes this part of the season, you're not going to have a lot of fab left over, and most of your league mates probably already spent all their fab, so maybe you're able to get Jalen Hurts for pretty much nothing. But this is most important to the people who are in 2 quarterback leagues and are the Carson Wentz owner. You need to have that second quarterback to even make a chance to play, for a championship in your fantasy league. So, Jalen Hurts, he's not owned in many leagues. I mean, I think he's like just under 2% owned, but he's one of my guys that I think that has some pretty interesting upside, just because of his ability in a sense of like being able to rush the ball and also pass. But we don't have a very big sample size. Who knows? He could start, on Sunday and be a complete mess. I mean, so very interesting, but I think he's a good waiver wire pickup. And then my second quarterback on the list is Mitch Trubisky. I know it's always ugly. You should never watch Mitch Trubisky's games. You just wait and see what fantasy points you get from him, because he's a guy that is not, I never want to say, I mean, if you're in the NFL, you're a talented player, but just a guy that you can't really rely on enough to think that you're going to get consistent play out of him, because in week 12, he came out and had close to 30 points, and then he comes out this week and has 16 on a very favorable matchup. But that being said, I mean, he is 17% owned. In the next 3 games, he has Houston, Minnesota, and Jacksonville. So if you're looking for a streamer and some upside, I think the way the Chicago Bears play offense, I think that there could be a lot of garbage time. So I think that Mitch Trubisky is a player that you can hopefully stream, and he may be able to win you a championship based on the schedule he has remaining. But he's my second quarterback on the list. And then my third quarterback is Baker Mayfield. Now he's 20% owned. Baker Mayfield has been on fire the last couple weeks. I mean, for him to throw for 4 touchdowns in the first half and do what he did on Sunday makes me excited about what he can do the rest of the season. Now, in week 14, he does play Baltimore, so that is a very tough matchup. But, it is, I had benched Baker Mayfield in my main league. We're in a 2 quarterback league, and I had benched him for Mitch Trubisky, and it looked really bad for me when the early games went on Sunday, and I was getting so frustrated. But I was still able to secure the win. But Baker Mayfield goes from having 3 games in a row where he had single-digit fantasy points, and then last week had over 20, and this week he had close to 40. So it is one of those things where I think Baker Mayfield's finally starting to hit that groove, and I think that he could be definitely a good streamer going forward. Maybe not in week 14, but he does get the New York Jets and New York Giants in 15 and week 16. So just something to think about. And then my last quarterback on the list is Andy Dalton. Now he's 5% owned, and like I said, on Tuesday night he had 285 yards and 2 touchdowns. He does play Cincinnati in week 14. Now, I do believe in revenge games. I do think that because of how bad the Cincinnati Bengals defense is, I do think that with the talent that the Cowboys do have, I think Andy Dalton could be a very good streamer for week 14 right now. I don't think that you need to think about anything other than week 14. So if you're looking for a streamer, he may be a guy that could give you some good production. And then moving on to the running back position. I only have 2 guys on this list, and these 2 guys are only based on if there's continuations of injuries to the starters of these teams. And the first running back is Ty Johnson. Now he's pretty much owned everywhere. Frank Gore left the game Sunday due to an injury. It looks like he had a concussion. So Ty Johnson came in and was a replacement. Now, obviously, if Frank Gore can't clear the concussion protocol before the game on Sunday, this makes Ty Johnson an appealing, flex type of player. He did have over 100 yards on Sunday. However, you go back, do you want to trust Adam Gase? Do you want to trust the Jets offense? That's something that you have to think about. Ty Johnson, I'm a little bitter towards Ty Johnson because I had picked him up when Kerryon Johnson went out last year on the Detroit Lions, and then I played Ty Johnson and he got me pretty much no production. So I'm not somebody who's going to be trying to grab Ty Johnson in my own leagues. But if you are a guy who needs volume and needs, a boom bust type of player, I do understand that if Frank Gore is out. And then my second running back is Adrian Peterson. Now he's 42% owned. We still don't know what's going on with DeAndre Swift. We have no idea if he's going to be active for week 14. However, if he's still inactive, honestly, Peterson could provide some good numbers, against the Packers in week 14. Because now you talk about Adrian Peterson in the last 2 weeks has been a top 10 running back. He's had 2 touchdowns in the last 2 games, and now he plays a Green Bay Packers defense that is very bad against the run. So could be a good flex play this week if DeAndre Swift is out. So I think that's something to look at just in case you need the run back help. But those are my 2 running backs for week 14. Now looking at my wide receivers, I got a few on this list, and my first wide receiver is Kiki QT. Had a good game on Sunday. Now he's 20% owned. His stat line on Sunday, he was 8 for 141 on 9 targets. Now, the only thing about Kiki QT is that they do have the Texans do have a tough matchup coming up. They do play Chicago, and then they play the Colts again. So they just played the Colts this past Sunday, and Kiki QT had a good game. Now you have to play Chicago, then you go back and play the Colts. So that's the only thing about him is that obviously you want somebody who gets a good target share. However, how does that translate to the defense that have to go up in the next 2 weeks? So I think it's definitely a good add. Just have those expectations altered just a little bit. And now my second wide receiver is T.Y. Hilton. Now he is 46% owned, so this is a guy that is a very hard reality for everyone who's... T.Y. Hilton is a very talented receiver. We saw what he did with Andrew Luck. And then you see kind of what's going on right now this season. He's been pretty much a bench player or somebody that he was even on your waiver wire until this past week. But look, he's finally shown some life to the 2020 season. Now, on Sunday, he was 8 for 110 in a touchdown on 11 targets. I mean, he's had a touchdown in the last 2 games. He does get Las Vegas and Houston. So this may be a guy that could lead you to a fantasy championship based on the fact, it looks like he's finally coming around. Hopefully the consistency he's had in the last 2 games translates against the Raiders and then against the Texans again. But I think T.Y. Hilton is a very good pickup. And then my third wide receiver is Tim Patrick. Now he's 19% owned. He had another good game. He had 4 catches for 44 yards and 2 touchdowns. However, he doesn't have the best playoff schedule. It is a very tough, next slate of games, but he's been the most consistent one since Cortland Sutton has been out. So I think that Tim Patrick, he's been a guy that I've mentioned, on and off in the waiver wire shows throughout the year. But I do think that he's a guy that you could, get some production from if you need it. And then my next 2 wide receivers, they're on the Jets offense. It's Rashad Perriman and Denzel Mims. Now, they didn't have very good games this past weekend, but they are 2 guys that you could get targeted a lot. I do think that based on their speed and their physicality, I do think that they could be decent plays, but it's still hard for me to trust any type of New York Jet player. So I think there's guys that you can have on your radar, but not some guys I want to go out there and want to plug in and try to win a fancy playoff game. So just guys to have on your radar. And my last wide receiver is Gabriel Davis. Now, he's scored in the last 2 weeks. Cole Beasley and Gabriel Davis are both benefiting with John Brown being injured. Now, we don't know when he's going to come back. However, I do think that it's all about high risk, high reward. You're in the fantasy playoffs. If you don't win, there's no week 15. So you have to put the best lineup you can. And now if you're in deeper leagues, I think Gabriel Davis is a good fit. But I think if you're in the smaller leagues, like in 10 or 12 team leagues, I don't think he's a guy that you would play. But it's all about matchups. Just because he may be a guy who's ranked pretty low doesn't mean that he doesn't have a good matchup where he can do some damage. So just a guy to put on your list as well. Now moving on to the tight end position. My first tight end is Jordan Reed. Now he's owned in 21% of leagues. Now he had a very good Monday Night Football game. He had 12.2 PPR points. So this is obviously not George Kittle production, but at least, tight end has been so awful this year. If you don't have some of the top guys, you have to find ways to have some upside, and Jordan Reed will continue to have that. He continue to get the target share. So the next 3 games he has Washington, Dallas, and Arizona, all decent matchups. So that could be your tight end that you could play in the fantasy playoffs because of the target share and just kind of how he's going to get that production based on being with George Kittle being out. Now there are some rumors that George Kittle could come back, so that will obviously alter Jordan Reed's status. But as of right now, Kittle's still on IR, so Jordan Reed seems to continue to be a good option for you at tight end. And my second tight end is Dalton Schultz. Now he's 25% owned. Like I said, he had 4 catches for 44 yards on Tuesday Night Football. And the good thing about this, he hasn't seen less than 4 targets. Like, he's only seen less than 4 targets once the whole entire season. So regardless if it was Dak Prescott or Andy Dalton, he's getting the targets, he's getting the looks. So now what he does with that is there are these quality targets. Does he get any yardage out of it? That's all yet to be determined. But he's getting a steady amount of targets, which is good. Now he does play Cincinnati in Week 14, so this is a good streamer option. This is a good matchup. So I think Dalton Schultz could be played in Week 14. And then going on to Tennessee, Anthony Fisker. So we don't know right now. We don't know Jonnu Smith's status. We don't know exactly if he will be available on Sunday when the Titans play. But if not, I think this is a good pivot. Now he's only 7% owned. So if he continues to miss time, I think this could be a good pivot. On Sunday he had 5 catches for 51 yards on 7 targets. He's had some when Jonnu Smith has missed some time. Fisker has had some a decent game here and there. So I think that if you're desperate, he could be a guy that you can grab and play. Then my last tight end is Logan Thomas. Now he's 30% owned. Had a great game. This past game against the Steelers, he was 9 for 98 and a touchdown on 9 targets. Now he does play the 49ers coming up next. So obviously a tough matchup, tough defense. As Richard Sherman has come back, this 49ers defense has gotten a little bit better. I know they just had a bad game, but I do think that Logan Thomas could be a decent streamer for Week 14 as well. So that is all of my top waiver wire pickups for Week 14. To try to get you that fantasy win. Now, leave a comment below if you have any other questions about some other players. The waiver wire, since we had a Tuesday Night Football game, the waivers won't go through until Thursday, which is crazy because we do have a Thursday Night Football game. So on Thursday night we got the Patriots versus the Rams. So that is going to be interesting to see if anybody that you are picking up are going to be available for you when Week 14 starts. But that is it for today. Thank you so much for listening. Now, like I said, on the next episode, I'll be previewing the Week 14 matchup against the Patriots and the Rams for our Thursday Night Football game. So if you don't want to miss the episode, please hit subscribe. And if you'd like to follow us on social media, you can find us over on Twitter and Facebook at the Gridiron Pod. You can find us over on Instagram at Gridiron Fantasy Football. So that's it for today. Good luck with all your waiver wire pickups, and we'll see you on Thursday.